Hello there, crafty friends. It's Alicia of the Call Me Crafty Al YouTube channel, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you how I created this Winter Wishes card using the October 2019 paper pumpkin kit. I hope you'll stick around and see how I made it. Thank you so much for stopping by today. If this is your first time to my channel, I hope by the end of this video that you'll be inspired to click on that subscribe button below and maybe even tap on that bell for notifications. If you're already a subscriber and regular viewer, welcome back. I am so glad that you're here again. As I mentioned in the intro, I will be creating an alternative card using the October 2019 paper pumpkin kit. With the kit, if you follow the instructions exactly, you can create 10 cards that look like this. They just might have a different sentiment here at the bottom. But because I usually don't send out a lot of Christmas cards, I wanted to see what I could create using the rest of the kit parts. So that is what I will be sharing with you over the rest of the weekend and maybe even into early this week. Today's alternative card was inspired by the little wood grain tags that came with the kit. I thought that might make a fun plank look card for the background, but because it only came with I think 12 of these, I didn't want to use them all for this card. So I will actually be using the inside of one of the envelopes. These are awesome envelopes. They have this great silver foiling, but they also have that great wood grain on the inside. Before I get started with the process, I'm going to share with you here quickly what products I'm using from the kit and what I'm using from my personal stash. As I start to share with you how the card is created, I will go to a voiceover. So if you have a question that I don't answer in that voiceover, make sure to leave it in the comment section below and I'll get back to you just as soon as I can. So from the kit for the stamps, I will be using the snow dotted background and I will be using the sentiment that says Winter Wishes. I have also pulled out the silver foil blue fishtail banner, one of the birch tree pieces, and if you have this kit you already know, but this is kind of like a sparkly cardstock, but nothing rubs off. That is excellent. And I will also be using some of the birds from the kit yet. I don't quite know yet if I'll be using one or two of these, but I did grab that out. Like I mentioned earlier, I'll be using one of the envelopes for my wood grain. And then the items I got out that did not come with the kit are my Versamark Dazzle Watermark stamp pad. I have an archival ink in sepia. I will be using just a red standard A4 card base. I have a piece of white cardstock that is 3 3/4 by 5, and that will be the mat for my wood grain piece. I have already put adhesive on a piece of white cardstock that is 3 1/2 by 4 3/4. Now you don't have to do this if you don't have a Xyron. You could just adhere each of your planks with your standard glue. I just like this because it's already sticky and ready to go for me. One thing I did forget to mention that I'll be using from the kit is the Night of Navy Stampin' Spot that came with it. I'll be using this for the sentiment. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start today by using my watermark ink to stamp my snowflake stamp from the kit around the outside edge of the card front. This just gives a really subtle effect. I like what it adds, and since my focal point will cover up the center of the card, there is no need to stamp there. I will be using the Night of Navy ink spot to stamp my sentiment. Now because this is a new stamp, I do test it out once on a scrap of paper. If you notice that your new stamps are splotchy, you can first cover it in the Versamark and then ink it up with the final color that you're going to stamp it in. You'll notice that I am stamping my sentiment to the left of center, and that is because later I will be cutting the right side of the tag off. To get started on my wood planks, I will be cutting my envelope apart. Now in the past, I would try to tear the envelope open, but I have learned that if you use your trimmer to just take off the left and right edges, it is much easier to get a nice clean cut or tear. Once I had the envelope open, I just then went and cut so the wood pattern would bleed off the edges of my main piece. Once that was done, because I will be cutting my plank in 1/2-inch sections, I cut the height of my wood grain paper so it would stop at a 1/2-inch mark. For instance, I did this one at 5 inches. And then all I had to do was move it down a 1/2 inch every time to get my final plank. While I still had my trimmer out, I wanted to go ahead and cut my birch piece to the correct width. But because the 3 3/4 would have ran into the other trees, I did just snip those off beforehand because I do want these to be usable later. And now it is time to create the focal point. What I will do is ink each edge of my wood planks with my sepia ink. This helps hide those white edges of the paper, and it also adds just a little bit to the effect of making this look like a real wood floor. To get started, I just laid one of my planks down partway across the top of the card. Then when I cut the excess off on the right of that, I had enough to bring over to the left to make it look like the plank that was up next to it. What I do now is just to continue to lay each layer of the floor, and you'll notice that I make the planks go back and forth, and one actually goes all the way across the card, and I just repeat those 3 rows all the way down this piece of white cardstock. For now, I'm not going to worry about trimming off the excess on the left side because I can fix this later and trim those off when I'm ready to finalize my background piece. Now all of my floorboards have been laid. You'll notice that I have some excess white at the bottom, but that is okay because that will be covered up by my snowy hill on my birch trees. I can now cut off the excess planks on the outside of my card, and I do this by flipping my card over to make it easier to see. Because I have cut off the inking around the edges, I just go back in with my ink pad to finish that up. There were a couple kind of gaps in my flooring, so what I did is I just used the ink pad to try to get in there as best I could. And next I just matted the wood grain piece with that piece of white cardstock that I had cut earlier. To adhere my birch trees to my card front, I got out my Xyron 150 sticker maker, and I got out the mini dimensionals that came with the kit. I started by running the birch tree that I had cut off the snowy hill through my Xyron, and then I did the rub and peel technique so I could make that into just one big sticker. For some added depth, I will be placing the sticker I just made flat down onto the wood plank background. Then I will add the snowy hill and the other birch tree with those dimensionals. And that just, I think, gives more dimension, more depth, and adds a little bit something extra to the card. Before adding the focal point to the card base, I did trim off those top parts of the birch trees, and this was about the time I realized I probably should have put the wood grain onto my card front before I added the dimensional trees, but live and learn. To finish the card off, I will be adding the sentiment tag, the 2 red birds, and I brought out the snowflake sequins that came with the kit. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I stamped the sentiment to the left of that tag for a reason. The right side will actually be cut off even with that white edge of the birch trees. I just roughly marked where I wanted to trim that tag with my hands and then got my trimmer back out. To bring in some more of the red, I did decide to use both of the red birds, and one of those I just put right there on the right side of the sentiment tag. Because the right birch tree is flat down on the card front, I was able to use dimensionals for my sentiment tag, and then that makes it even or level with the birch trees on the left. I added my second bird in the left tree, and then I went to add my snowflake sequins. What I did, I decided to put 5 on there, just like the original card from the kit. But first I put down 5 of those little glue dots onto the card front where I wanted my sequins, and then I used my quick pick tool to put the sequins on each of those glue dots. That made it super simple and easy instead of trying to get them with my fingernails. And here are some close-ups of the finished card. I hope you like seeing how I made my first alternative using the October 2019 paper pumpkin kit. If you did, as always, I appreciate a thumbs up. Until my next video, I hope you're having a crafty day. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch all the way to the end of the video. I hope that you'll consider clicking on one of the videos or playlists I have linked above, and if you're interested in any of the products or tools that I use in the video, I do have some links in the description box.